The king's court was packed with advisors who collected massive salaries for doing very little. They offered the same safe, hollow suggestions every day, while the treasury drained and the kingdom's borders remained vulnerable to any enemy willing to take a risk. During a hunting trip meant to escape his stagnant court, the king found a man sitting in the mud. He was muttering to himself, using a stick to scratch complex, massive palace floor plans into the dirt. He claimed he was the architect of the forest, and that one day he would rule from a throne made of stone. The king decided to bring this man back to the palace, but the journey was interrupted when the stranger suddenly gripped the horse's reins and forced the entire carriage off the road. This map shows their original path, a direct line into a narrow pass where an enemy army had been waiting in total silence. By swerving into the trees, the group avoided the red zone entirely. The stranger's sudden outburst had effectively steered them around a trap that the king's professional scouts and high-priced advisors had missed entirely. The king realized his advisors were so focused on following the map that they had become blind to the actual forest. This madman was the only person in the convoy reacting to the immediate reality of the world around them. Grateful for his life, the king bypassed his entire cabinet and placed a new chair directly beside his own throne, seating the disheveled stranger in a position of supreme honor. For the established courtiers, this was a financial disaster. Their generational wealth and influence relied on the king listening only to them. Now, an unpredictable outsider held more power than the men who had spent decades climbing the social ladder. Jealousy in the hallways quickly turned into a coordinated conspiracy. The advisors realized they couldn't control the newcomer, so they decided he had to be removed by any means necessary. The palace became a battlefield. On one side, a network of educated men armed with political malice. On the other, an outsider who had no idea he was even in a fight. The courtiers designed their first trap by lying to the stranger about royal etiquette. They told him that to show true loyalty, he was required to deliver a sharp slap to the king's neck at a morning session. Trusting them, the man struck the king, knocking his jewel-encrusted crown off his head. It went tumbling across the polished stone floor. The guards drew their swords, but they froze when they looked at the crown. Crawling out from the gold interior was a highly venomous scorpion that had been inches from the king's skin. The king didn't see an insult. He saw a man who had acted with enough violence to save him from a lethal sting. Instead of an execution, the king rewarded the stranger with a sprawling palace of his own. The courtiers' plan backfired. By trying to frame him for treason, they had actually provided him with the opportunity to prove his loyalty on a grander scale. Desperate to recover their status, the advisors tried a more direct form of sabotage. They sawed through the supports of the king's throne and told the stranger that pulling the chair away as the king sat down was a secret signal to earn half the kingdom. As the king prepared to sit, the stranger yanked the heavy wooden chair backward.
The king stumbled, nearly falling to the floor in front of his entire court. The king turned in a rage, but his eyes caught the chair leg. The wood was cleanly fractured. If he had sat down with his full weight, the support would have collapsed, driving the splintered wood upward and causing a severe injury. Once again, the king saw a preemptive rescue. He immediately promoted the stranger to general of the army, placing the kingdom's entire military under his command. Sabotage relies on the victim reacting with predictable logic. Because the stranger acted without calculation, he was accidentally dismantling the traps before they could even spring. The advisors committed their final act of desperation, high treason. They contacted a neighboring empire, promising to leave the border undefended if the rival army would specifically target and kill their new general. When the rival army arrived, the general didn't order a charge. Instead, he marched into the center of the valley and challenged the enemy king to a solo duel to settle the matter without wasting the lives of his soldiers. As the rulers prepared to fight, a massive lion leapt from the brush. It ignored the general and launched directly at the enemy king. The general dropped his sword, tackled the beast, and killed the lion with his bare hands. He then stood over the bleeding enemy ruler and pulled him to safety. Political boundaries meant nothing in that moment. The general wasn't thinking about the war or the treason. He was reacting to a person in danger. which inadvertently turned a battlefield into a rescue mission. Shaken by the rescue, the enemy king called off the invasion. He handed over the secret letters from the advisors, exposing the treasonous plot and ensuring a lasting peace between the two nations. The general returned to the capital with proof of the conspiracy. The king, seeing the stranger's consistent ability to triumph over every threat, gave him his daughter's hand in marriage, making him the heir to the throne. In the dungeons, the disgraced advisors watched as the man they tried to destroy became their future king. A quiet, elderly courtier who had refused to join the plot watched them from the shadows. "Look at these pits." To the conspirators, these were graves dug for their rival. But as the stranger moved forward, the ground shifted. Each hole they dug began to invert and stack, turning their traps into a staircase that led him directly to the crown. The conspirators learned that when a person is destined to rise, every attempt to bury them only provides the foundation for their next step up. By the end, the pure-hearted man had gained a kingdom without ever trying to take one. The advisors spent every waking hour plotting for power, ended up losing the little they already had. Jealousy is inherently self-destructive because it forces you to focus on someone else's path. While you are busy digging holes for others, you aren't building anything for yourself. Lasting success isn't something you can steal or sabotage. It comes from internal cultivation, focusing on your own work, and ensuring your intentions are as solid as the throne you want to sit on. True success cannot be stopped by a conspiracy. In the very end, the malice of your enemies is often just the tool that builds your throne.